Hi folks, here's a quick video introduction. It's going to be posted right here. Rather than writing long narrative for each of these reviews, I thought I'd just talk you through them real quick. For most of them, what you're going to want to do is not simply watch it here in our Canvas homepage. You're going to want to click on the link. You want to open it up because most of these have really good discussion. They'll have tune list, performer list, there'll be all kind of information. Not all of them, but most of them have really good information that you're going to want. So you're going to open these and watch them in a separate page. I've kind of gone by chapter, but not exactly. For example, this first one, Thelonious Monk, Dizzy Gillespie, Giants of Jazz. There are people in this video that are covered in chapters 5, 6, 7, and 8. It's a fantastic concert, an interesting mix of stuff. It is the 70s. Check out the hair and the clothes. Pretty festive. I've also put up a few documentaries, particularly for the musicians who are a little more complex to understand. These are people I usually sort of put into narrative more in class. You're going to have to sort of discover them on your own. People like Thelonious Monk in chapter 5. He's a challenging dude. His music is challenging. His music is complex. There are reasons for that, though, and this documentary covers it. When you write a review of this nature, you might not go minute by minute. You might want to group 3 or 4 minutes together because it's one person's narrative, or there's a 4-minute performance where, it's really just, this is Monk and this is how he plays piano. Skipping to chapter 7, although you'll meet him in chapter 6 with Miles Davis, John Coltrane. This is his great quartet at the height of their hard bop powers. It's gnarly stuff. It's fantastic performance, but it is pretty intense music. The great Jimmy Smith, Hammond B3 player from chapter 7, Cannonball from chapter 6 and 7, Dave Brubeck from chapter 6, Mingus from chapter 7. This is an interesting mix of stuff, and this is actually, in some cases these guys are performing together, but this is actually from a larger performance where one guy comes on with a group and does a few tunes, so on and so forth. Just review the whole thing. At the end of chapter 5, I talk briefly about the style vocalese. I show you Lambert, Hendricks, and Ross. I talk about Ella and Eddie Jefferson. This is the legacy of that. This is the Manhattan Transfer. This is their great album, Vocalese. This is a live performance doing the music from that album. It's amazing. Take 6 is a group that I love a lot, and I think they often get overlooked. They've won 10 Grammys. They've recorded a series of critically acclaimed albums, and they kind of get caught in the middle between they come out of the contemporary Christian world, but they're really hardcore jazz, and the contemporary Christian world doesn't always know what to do with them. Jazz world doesn't always know what to do with them either, and I think they get overlooked sometimes, which I think is really a shame. You just have to take them where they are. They do both sacred and secular music, and they are mind-blowingly precise in their singing. Check them out. Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra does tons of great concerts, and they're posting a lot of them right now. This is one of my favorites. This is the music of Miles Davis. This covers Miles from several periods in his life. This is a little different. This is a live TV show from the 60s, late 60s. This is Miles in chapter 7, the second great quintet at the height of their hard bop powers. Gnarly, gnarly stuff, but amazing. Back to chapter 6 for the Modern Jazz Quartet, one of the greatest cool school groups of all time. Art Blakey, chapter 7. If you ever get to travel again, look in the back in the appendix of the book. You'll see club listings. Ronnie Scott's, arguably the greatest jazz club in all of London. When you get to London, go check it out. This is pretty hardcore, hard bop jazz from chapter 7, but it's great playing. I love the Hammond B3 organ. Joey DeFrancisco is one of my favorites. He's really not mentioned in the book, but it's such a great live concert I put it up. Here's another documentary, Sun Ra. You'll want to check that out. Pretty cool stuff. There's no way to describe Sun Ra, you just have to watch it. Annette Coleman, pioneer of the free jazz movement. This is a really interesting live performance of the band. Again, not greasy kid stuff, but fascinating. Herbie Hancock. Herbie is in second great quintet of Miles in chapter 7, but he also pioneers, along with Miles Davis, the concept of fusion jazz in the 1970s. The Headhunters was his first really important band, and they did a series of critically acclaimed albums, including the tune Chameleon, which is in your books in chapter 9. This is 1974. They're tearing it up. Spyro Gyra is mentioned in chapter 9 as a more pop version of fusion jazz, and this is a great example of them from the 1980s. Tower Powers in chapter 9, one of my absolute favorite bands. This is a party band. If you like to go and listen to great music and watch people having a good time, this is it. This band's been together over 40 years now, and this is their 40th anniversary video. This has some great documentary footage. There's some great narrative where they talk about the band, so you'll want to describe some of that in your concert review, but there's also just a ton of performance. It's really good. It's a little longer, but it's absolutely worth it. Randy and Michael Brecker, first call musicians in New York City. They've played on 1 billion albums over the years. but together they had a band. It was a great fusion band. This is the band live in the early 90s. Awesome. I could have put up 100 different videos from Pat Metheny. This is a really nice live concert. If you like what you see here, go on the internet. There's tons more of it. Joni Mitchell was a crossover folk rock artist, but she often backed herself up with great jazz musicians. People like Pat Metheny, people like Jaco Pastorius from Weather Report. They're both on this concert. And one of the things I'm amazed at with Joni is she always gives everybody a chance to play, right? It's not all about her and her singing and her songs. Everybody gets featured at one point or another. Chapter 10, Mainstream Music. This is Count Basie's Orchestra with Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr. Johnny Carson makes an appearance here. This is a more toned-down fundraiser live public concert of the Rat Pack. This is sort of what they used to do in Vegas at midnight, but not near as much. They toned down the drinking, they toned down the racy jokes, but it's still a really good show. Oscar Peterson, one of the great mainstream pianists of all time, with one of my favorite bass players, Niels Henning Ørsted Pedersen. This is just a duo, and it is some of the most clean, awesome swinging jazz you'll ever hear. Another great duet album or performance, Joe Pass and Ella Fitzgerald. They perform together a lot. This is one of my favorite live shows. This is done for television in Germany. Joe Pass often worked with these two guys as well. You can go on the internet and find them, or find all three of them backing her up. Pretty cool. At the end of Chapter 10, we talk briefly about Latin jazz. Toots Thielemans is from Belgium, but he makes the point that Latin jazz has become a universal commodity, that we all speak that language. He went to Brazil and worked with Brazilian musicians and made two great albums called the Brazil Project 1 and 2. This is a live concert that features those artists, and it is fantastic. Gonzalo Rubalcaba, one of my favorite Latin piano players. He's from Cuba. You'll want to take the time to look him up on the internet, read about him in Wikipedia. He defected very dramatically from Cuba, came to America for a time. Dizzy Gillespie helped him get out. He's an astounding piano player. This is a new concert that I just found for this particular project that I'm doing for you guys today. I love Jay Linhart. He's a great sideman bass player in New York City, but he's also a cult vocalist, which I talk about at the end of Chapter 10. This is a show he just threw, it's basically FaceTime, and just streamed this a couple of years ago from his house. It's just him playing bass and singing his songs. Listen carefully to the lyrics. It's very lyric-driven stuff. And you'll notice the concert count. This thing's only been watched a few thousand times, which I think is really sad. He's amazing. Miles Davis, Quincy Jones, Gil Evans Band. What else do you need to know? Diana Krall from Chapter 11. It's a great live concert. At the beginning of the semester, I played Summertime for You. Talked about Patricia Barber at the Green Mill on Monday nights in Chicago. When you can travel again, go see her live. This is one of her live shows. Good old Carling. Can't describe it. Got to see it. She often works, though, with Postmodern Jukebox, which I've also posted here. Postmodern Jukebox does jazz-styled music from the 30s and 40s. Does a lot of gypsy jazz kind of stuff, but they're doing all modern pop tunes. You have to hear them do All About the Bass. It's all about that bass. Pretty amazing. Both of those are great shows. Not mentioned in our books, but this is one of my favorite live concerts of all time. Michelle Petrucciani. You'll want to check that out. I could have posted a ton of Esperanza Spalding. I chose this one because I really like the house concert feel of it. When I'm shooting this video, we're actually in the middle of the COVID-19 coronavirus crisis, so that's why we're talking about things the way we are. But I'm hoping we can use this video for years to come. So, hi folks in 2024. Hope everything's cool by the time you get there. Andrew Bird played with Squirrel Nut Zippers. He's done a lot of alt-country, alt-rock kind of stuff. And this is basically him and Esperanza Spalding just jamming at his house. So house concerts are very appropriate for what we're doing right now. This is the other side of Esperanza Spalding here. This concert was done for NPR, and it's sort of her performance art stuff. Again, open the thing, read about it. You'll understand it a lot better. Again, not mentioned in the book, she'll be in the 5th edition of the book. Hiromi is an amazing young jazz piano player from Japan. Stunning technique. Richard Bona, I got to tell this story real quick. This is one of my favorite concerts of all time. About 15 years ago, I went to the Blue Note in New York City, one of my favorite jazz clubs, and I saw Steve Turre, who's a really loud, kind of raucous trombone player. He also plays jazz on the conch shells. You have to see it. It's on the internet. Google it. But it's his show, right? And I went to see it. The second act that night was this guy, Richard Bona. He's a bass player. He was inspired by Jaco Pastorius. And he came out that night after this crazy loud concert, and he stood on stage, just him and a 6-string electric bass, and he started playing, I gotta hold my hands up, he started playing these really tight chords on the bass and singing very softly in an African dialect. And he didn't back up off of it. He was just really quiet and very intimate. And the crowd was, it was really loud in the club. It took about 5 minutes. I was sitting watching this because I was by myself and wasn't talking to anybody. It took about 5 minutes, and that whole club just sort of turned, and they start looking at the stage. And all of a sudden, you could hear a pin drop. And for the next hour, I've never seen a crowd that engaged in a concert. And he was brand new in America. Nobody had ever heard of him. Nobody knew who he was or what he did. It was a mind-blowing evening. This concert has some of that music, but this is with the WDR Big Band. This is one of the German big bands, state-run big bands, and it's an amazing group. Very hip show. Lake Street Dive, one of my favorite bands around right now. Snarky Puppy, another one that's just really hot right now, on tour, or they will be again someday. A lot of these guys are doing live streaming stuff. And of course, finally, Brad Mehldau. He's the guy that does Blackbird by the Beatles right at the end of chapter 11. This is a great live concert from him. So, as I say, when I'm shooting this video, we're in the middle of the coronavirus crisis. So what else you got to do? Go listen to some good music. It's all right here for you. See ya.